We are back for another journal entry here at the Training Model Podcast. Plenty has been going on in the last couple of weeks in my world, and I'm going to share some of the things and some of the lessons I've been learning and thinking about through the processes to finish up 2024. So I've had a couple of live events actually. So a couple of weeks ago, I had a team of EPs come down from Canberra, which was awesome. It was the first time that anybody has ever traveled for me as a team and for some of the ideas and things I like to talk about. So PB Physiology were the squad. 8 of them came down and we spent a full day on a Saturday. It was the day of the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight, which was cool because we were chatting. They were a great bunch of lads, and they came down for a private workshop. Initially, it wasn't meant to be private. I was going to sell tickets external, which obviously after I had them down, and I never ended up selling the tickets. I made one email about it, but I never followed up anything other than that. Never made any content about it. Simply because I was like, well, these guys are traveling down. Maybe I'll just keep this thing exclusive and keep it a little bit more open for what they're looking for. And it actually turned out to be really good. So it was initially meant to be just rib cage and breathing stuff. However, we ended up getting into a lot of foot-based things, a lot of center of mass, as we do within my principal model of movement. All of the things are going to tie together pretty comfortably and easily. So as soon as you start unpacking one area of the system, you're going to get into these principal ideas of mass in motion, foot pressure, strength training, and all the things I like to talk about. So it was initially meant to be ribcage and breathing, and we spent plenty of time on that. I've actually got some content that's been trickling out related to some of the assessments we were doing and some of the outcomes that we were seeing and how to use the drills and some of the narratives around those ideas. Ultimately, a lot of it stems from the PRI influence, just without a lot of the shitty narratives that PRI wrap their ideas up. But it was fucking mad. It was really good. And every time I do an in-person event, I always leave the day thinking, man, I need to do more of these events. And it's been a little bit of a realization for me. Obviously, the online mentorship has been gangbusters and intake 3 is open. Early bird is currently open. So if you are keen to do the third intake of the online movement mentorship, please jump in. Code NASA to save 25% is available with the early bird. That runs for another couple of weeks. But yeah, obviously with the success of the online movement mentorship, which has blown my expectations. In fact, I didn't really have any expectations when I was setting it up, but it's been awesome. And a lot of internationals, which has been really, really fucking cool and a different experience for me. Definitely the most amount of internationals I've ever dealt with, which has been awesome. Different challenges, obviously with time zones and all of that sort of stuff, but yeah, I digress. The online stuff is fucking mad. It brings the price down for the amount that I can do, obviously, because it's ultimately just open and as many people as they want can jump in. It is still a mentorship, obviously, so I'm still involved with the people that want me. I'm as involved as you want me to be. We can set up calls, we can send me DMs, emails, whatever needs to happen for you to get the most out of that online experience. I'm there for. It's not a course, it is a mentorship. But the in-person events, they just fucking hit different. And ultimately, like, I just get to this realization that I need to do it. I have to just, in the same way that I attacked the marketing for the online mentorship, I need to do it for in-person events. And initially I wanted to get to the UK, putting that out on social media. There's people out there that want me to go, but I can't. It's too big of a risk with the family and the price and the uncertainty of how many people I will be able to get to the event and the potential cost of it and also the potential loss of it. It's just too much of a risk right now with the young family. So I spoke to Laura and said potentially putting on the back burner for the following year or towards the end of next year. It's still a massive goal for me that I want to do overseas-based education stuff. And I think the development of training model and the more consistency within my just putting content out and getting my ideas out and getting my views out, I know that potential is there. It just can't be the priority right now going international, which means that based off the feelings that I continually get with these in-person events. I have to grasp the Australian market. I have to hit the Australian market properly, and I'm going to do it. So initially, I was speaking to Con, the media person that helps me with the training model, about the ideas, and we were umming and ahhing about a one-day event, and it'd probably be a little bit easier to sell a single-day event. However, I think I want to do 2-day events. So the first one is going to be in Melbourne, without a doubt. I'm not going to put any dates up or anything until after the third intake begins, which will be the end of January, for the online mentorship. Just because I think then I just run myself thin, especially over the Christmas period, and with 3 back-to-back online mentorships, I'm kind of getting sick of just selling and marketing those things currently. So I think I'm going to wait for the Melbourne one. I think I'm going to do it towards the end of Feb. It will obviously be here at Strength Culture. I want it to be a 2-day event. I might plan out the content and all of that sort of stuff, and see what that might look like. If we could do one full day, that might work too. But based off that, I'm then going to hit hopefully every state in Australia. I've had a few people reach out from Perth and Canberra related to, because they are smaller cities with regards to people that follow me. But I think I'm going to hit it properly. I think I might even reach out to some networks and see if I can do like team-based discounts and all of those sort of things. Like, I'd love to get like 20 people at all of them. If I could do that and be confident that that is a viable sort of strategy for me to travel and take time away from the family and do all of those sort of things, I think it's going to happen. So, which does mean that there will be a slight change in the online mentorship after this next intake. I'll probably take 3 months off the online mentorship. So if you do want to jump in on the online mentorship, especially all you internationals, it's fucking heavily discounted just because the Australian Aussie dollar is fucking trash right now. But this will probably be the last one for at least 3 months after the January intake, which kicks off on Jan 13 with the pre-learning module, and then Jan 30th for the first live call. This will probably be the last one for definitely a few months. So if you are keen, I would recommend jumping in, because I want to make these in-person events viable. And if the big audacious goal that scares the fuck out of me is an international event, I need to prove to myself that it is viable even within my own country first. So Australian dates will come out, but the online mentorship will be the final one for a few months with this intake 3. It's definitely going to keep rolling because it's so much fun, and the experience of the people running through it have been so positively overwhelming. So it's definitely going to continue to run. It just means that I'm going to shift focus just a little bit for a few months to get these in-person events in Australia rolling, which will be awesome. So keep an eye out for that if you are keen. I do want to run through some of the stuff that I went through with the PB physiology team, because, and a lot of it is going to stem around the rib cage and breathing, because it is I don't know. Every time I come back to using it a lot, it just helps so many people so quickly, and it just opens these options for movement expression and understanding of position in space that ticks so many boxes from a motor control standpoint and actually developing skill, but also just an expression standpoint of challenging performance and actually training, and getting the most out of your training. So, I do want to chat a little bit right now about breathing, because I've been putting some content up about some of the outcomes, and I've had a few people DM me about the coaching process. I've been chatting about the rock back breathing a little bit, because I'm using that with one of my online clients now with great success for his bench press and some janky shoulder feelings. He was asking me questions about what it is and how it works. But ultimately, when we think of these breathing drills, they're simply just the entry level of the sensory end of movement. So one of my main principles is sensory at one end and motor at the other end, or motor output at the other end. Shout out to Pat Davidson, who also shouted me out. Pat Davidson is a fucking sick count. Waking up to that message or that comment was so nice. Like, unbelievable. So thanks, Patty D. Shouts out Patty D. One of the OGs of these ideas, but and the application of these ideas productively. But when I think of all training interventions, movement, programming, strategies, intensity, all of these sort of things, they just live on this continuum of sensory and motor. At one end, we have sensory based movement. Sensory based movement, I like to frame it as optimal learning. It's low level, generally isometric. It's low load, close to the ground, lots of sensory input, lots of proprioception. This sensory end is simply just for learning and understanding your position in space, your body in space, managing your mass, managing your position, managing tension and shifting tension. And ultimately that's where breathing interventions live. When you remove all of the narratives around breathing and the pseudoscience of specific muscles and positions and patterns and PRI narratives and the disciples of those ideas. When you remove all of that, that is just where breathing lives. It's the lowest entry level of sensory-based understanding and learning within the gym and within movement. So, and that's one of the big things that I always try to push. And that's why I think having a principle to frame back to is so important, because the principle allows you to see where the framework of your ideas falls within and the decision making of your ideas fall within. At the other end of the sensory motor in continuum is obviously your motor outputs, your performance-based training. This is what I like to think of as good training. At the sensory end is good learning, optimal learning. At the motor end is good training, optimal training. And this is where movements become more dynamic. We get off the ground, we get out of our body and out into the environment. External cueing makes a lot of sense. All of these larger expressions of dynamic, high performance based things live down that motor end, and then everything falls within the continuum somewhere. And every time you increase the progressive challenge of the expression, whether it be movement and skill, whether it be intensity, whether it be force production, rate of perceived exertion, intensity, all of these things just begin to shift up towards the motor end of good training, and utilizing that bottom end with things like breathing-based drills or sensory-based movements or isometrics and feeling positions and slowing things down and entering your body and understanding what your body is actually going through and the positions that it is in space. I've lost my train of thought there, but when you understand those sort of things and what they're good for, that is ultimately so valuable for so many people. It's not a beginner versus advanced strategy of understanding of programming. It is I have the ability to shift down the bottom end of this continuum, pick up easy wins of learning and motor control and skill development, and then progressively challenge it up towards the motor end of the continuum. And that's where the breathing stuff lives. So a couple of the key breathing drills that we went through were rock back breathing, where you kind of like on all fours and sit back onto your heels. Some people coach it without a big slump into lumbar flexion. I love the lumbar flexion. Anyone that's gone through some of my stuff knows the center of mass frame that I basically bring every movement strategy back to, but we're trying to shift the mass backwards as far as possible and change the awareness of the position in space for your nervous system. So I like to see a lumbar flexion in those drills, in that rock back drill, because it allows you to really access that end range of a shift back position. Once you're in all fours, you'll drop down to your elbows and actually let the arms move into a slight amount of shoulder flexion, which ticks some additional boxes in this shifted back position of center of mass, which is you're starting to bring external rotation into the system. You're starting to ER the arm. You're starting to flex the hip, flex the arms, flex and externally rotate, supinate the hands. All of these things that ride with a posterior tilt, that ride with a posterior scapular tilt and pelvic tilt, these things are really valuable to start to regain access to for a lot of strength-based lifters, because they get pushed forward in space, they get into these extension patterns and they live there and they produce high amounts of force there. But living there and doing too much there can ultimately start to reduce our range of motion, and things become to feel stiff and tight because we're just stuck at that end of the center of mass position, which is forward. So giving them as much access to shift back into ticks so many boxes in these low-level drills, in these sensory-based drills. And that's one of the reasons why I love the rock back, because it's almost as shifted back as you can get. You're as flexed as you can get without fully actively just crunching and rounding out your posture. It's a little bit more passive, which means we don't have as much tension in the system, which means when we actually start to get that diaphragm pumping within the ventral cavity, we start to actually shift tension and manage tension around the rib cage so easily and so productively. And you can see incredible gains in all range of motion when you do it. You'll get increases in shoulder flexions and IRs and ERs of the glenohumeral joint. You'll get hip flexions and hip internal rotations very easy, very quickly. It's not because of any narrative around these ideas of deregulating or taking tension away or inhibiting muscles. It's simply just that you're in a position that you're trying to access and you're starting to calm the system down, calm the nervous system down and manage all of that additional tension that would be pushing us in the opposite direction. So the breathing drills are fucking huge and they work so well, and I'd recommend, if you haven't played with them yourself, just try a couple of them. I have a bunch of videos in the Wormhole that unpack it. You're more than welcome to jump in there. But I also have some stuff on YouTube, but also just send me a DM if you got any questions. Like, I'm happy to chat through, or send me a video of yourself going through something. I can offer some technique help. Whatever it is you want to do, I'm here to help. That's the biggest thing with Training Model, is that I'm here to help. Especially as I'm smaller and only just getting started. I'm like 6 months into really pushing this new business of mine forward. I want to help people as much as they can. I've got plenty of people that send me DMs and ask me questions, but I'm always available. If you have other things you want to chat about, just let me know. And the breathing drills are definitely part of that, because I know a lot of people are confused by them because of the shit narratives. I can't stress that enough. That's the biggest thing within the mentorship as well, is like doing our best to understand the principles of decision making and movement so that you can remove the narratives. And when people are teaching and educating you, you can look past the narratives and actually see what they're actually talking about and how they're the principles that underpin what they're communicating, rather than the narrative and how they've wrapped it up and put a pretty bow tie around it, because the narrative is what fucks people. Get past the narratives, be as objective as you can within your learning processes as a coach in the development of your ideas and your own strategies, because you have to be objective, because the narratives are what ruined these models. The narratives are what ruin the ideas and the delivery and the success of these models. So look past them as best you can. And if you don't know how to do that, fucking do the mentorship. I'm here to help. This is the biggest thing that I'm passionate about, is getting coaches to better understand how to make their own informed decisions. So yeah. Unreal. In-person events are definitely coming. I'm leaning towards 2-day events. I'll obviously unpack some of the content and how that might look. I know I can fill 6 hours comfortably because I did that with the PB team, but if it's going to get towards like 10, 12 hours, it might turn into a 2-day event pretty quickly, which I'm leaning towards. But those dates are coming. And if you are keen to do the online mentorship, don't fucking wait. Do intake 3, because there's going to be a bit of a break before intake 4. Early bird is open. Code NASA saves 25% for the early bird. That's available until the middle of December. And yeah, let's go. The next thing I wanted to chat about, because I had another in-person event I spoke at, which was Rasheen Hawley. She ran a business event called Redefine. There were 8 speakers. I was fortunate enough to be one of them, chatting about some of the lessons in business over the last few years, because I have gone through a lot from a personal level. A lot of the things I chatted about in some of the initial videos here on the podcast that have bled into my career and my business. And and some of the changes in my direction and my desires for business and my stress and my anxiety that rides around a lot of those things. Yeah, it's no secret that I have been, I like to think about it as a dishwasher. I feel like I've been in a dishwasher these last couple of years. And I feel like I've done productive things to start to redefine what my goals are. But there's also things that I'm still struggling to work through and go through. None of this is easy. And that was a key theme of my chat, my talk at this event, Redefine. But ultimately, like, it was, I wanted to come from the lens of the key things that I think I kind of have stuffed up a little bit in the last couple of years, because I think I have fucked up a few things related to business. Things have been really positive in certain areas, but also really challenging in other areas. And I just wanted to shed light on some of those things. And one of the big things that when I was making the slides, my slides suck, as they often always do. Some slides have too much information, some slides have no information, but there's sort of like no direction with my slides. But one of the key things when I was making the slides about, especially like growth, delegation, growth, expansion, and these ideas, which we've gone through a huge growing period in the last couple of years, especially coming out of COVID with strength culture, has been, and moving the facility. One of the key things that I've always come back to is these ideas around delegation within business. And depending on where you're at with your business and your career, some of these things might not matter to you right now, but I would hope that eventually you get to a point where you can hire help, hire staff, expand your team in whatever that looks like for you. But a key sort of theme within my development over the last 8 years with strength culture has been delegation. And I don't know where I got this idea from. I definitely have, it's not my idea. I remember reading it somewhere or seeing an Instagram post somewhere, but this idea around that there's a difference between avoiding a task and not wanting to do something and not wanting to take responsibility for something, and delegating. Because if you delegate something because of a fear of your responsibility around it, I don't think that's the right thing for you to be delegating. You have to challenge and face what that responsibility is before you begin to delegate and just hire someone else for that. Because there is a big difference between avoiding something via delegation and true delegation of something where you believe someone has a better skill set than you for that task. And some of the common things that people will look to delegate within their business can be things like coaching. So if you might be nearing capacity and you think, man, I think I've got to take on a second coach, and you start to delegate the coaching process. You start to delegate leads, you start to delegate sales, conversions, and all of that. You might still do the selling, but you delegate the actual process of the coaching. This would be looking like hiring a new staff member, hiring a new coach, hiring a junior coach, whatever that might be. That is a form of delegation. However, that also can be a form of avoidance. Maybe you're avoiding growing a certain area of your business, or maybe you think that you're time poor. Maybe you're avoiding increasing your rates. Maybe you're avoiding telling people that you're at capacity. Maybe you're avoiding expanding your offers. Maybe you're avoiding something else and you've just decided to delegate some of the thing that's going really well because you don't want to challenge those new sort of or face those new challenges in business growth. That's just one example. Another example could be something like your marketing. I've gone through periods where I've tried to avoid marketing and delegate that out to external people, like ads managers and all of those sort of things, which kind of work, but then they also bring a different challenge in your energy levels and your processes and your brand and all of those sort of things. And maybe reflecting back, maybe I kind of wish that I took more control of that process. We definitely had success with Johnny, who runs PPS Gyms out in Perth. Shouts out Johnny. He has been really helpful towards the start of this year and the middle of this year, and definitely somebody that I would probably be looking to reignite that process with towards the start of next year. But that was another example of me kind of just like delegation via avoidance of something rather than just delegating because I do truly believe that someone else can help me and go through that process more productively. Another example of delegation versus avoidance can be things like finance management, bookkeeping, and all of those sort of things. But yeah, it's just a theme that I have definitely had over the last couple of years of delegating certain things, and I think reflecting back on some of those processes, I view it now as I was avoiding something within my business, and I think that has actually been more challenging to fix rather than if I just had done the right thing at the start. And it's always difficult, but ultimately this is business ownership, and no one, and this was a key theme across all of the talkers at this event, but ultimately there's no rule book on how to go through this thing. People start in the fitness industry generally very young, and they don't have much life experience. They probably don't have any business experience. I'm definitely still one of those people. I kind of feel like I'm just coming out of an internship with my business, even though I'm 8 years in, nearly 9 years in. I've had long-term staff. I've had great success. I've had things go super successful, and I've also had things go crash and burn to the ground. I'm still very new to business, and that's at least how I feel, because yeah, you don't really know until you get into it. So hopefully this idea of avoidance versus delegation can help you if you're thinking about some of those things. And as always, if you do have questions or you want to chat, just send me a DM. I'm here to help. I'm pretty open with chatting with everyone. So if you do have any questions or whatever related to that, just let me know, because I'm keen to help. But yeah, the event was mad. Redefine. I felt a little bit like a fraud, and I said that right at the start. I've been going through a big imposter syndrome. I don't think it's truly imposter syndrome. I think it's just a reflection of some of the challenges that I've faced over the last couple of years. No fault of my own, but I did say that if the event was 3 years ago, I would have been hella confident about, yeah, I can help anyone grow a business, and it's blah 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 and all of this. And now, a couple of years after that, I'm feeling like, oh fuck, it's really challenging. I feel like I'm going uphill. It's always difficult, but it just ebbs and flows. Business ebbs and flows, and yeah. So I don't know where I'm going with this anymore, but it was a mad event. I fucking loved it. Rasheen is a weapon, someone that inspires me. Beck Potteridge was also presenting, who was one of our interns at the very start of COVID, just before the lockdowns and all of that. She was a gym member, and she was presenting as well, and she's fucking crushing it with her business, which is Lioness Performance. She's a fucking champion. She presented as well. Rasheen presented, someone that inspires the fuck out of me, which was great. Steph as well, the Pain Mayo. She's a previous mentee of mine, I guess. I don't know, a coach that has come through some of my online education back in the day, and she's doing really, really well now, and learning from her and her experiences and her strategies around sort of challenging the narratives of the myotherapy and allied health world was really cool. It was just fucking mad. It was really, really, it was a good event. And one of the other things I really enjoyed about the event, because it wasn't so much like a performance-based event, there was a lot of people in the room that I'd never been exposed to, I'd never met before. Some of them knew who I was. A whole bunch of them had no idea who I was. And it was cool just to be around some new people in the industry, which was mad. Also, Ethan Fleming presented, and Ethan is a weapon. I fucking love Ethan. I might get him on this podcast and just chat about some business stuff with him. Might reach out to him. But Ethan Fleming was there too, and he's a weapon. Chatted and laughed all day with him. He's the best. So yeah, been a big couple of weeks, and to be honest, been a fucking just a massive year in general. So we keep chipping, and that's basically all I wanted to chat about today. As I said at the start, it's a bit more of a journal entry of some of the things that have been happening in the last couple of weeks. It's been a pretty hectic couple of weeks, but yeah. What I will say, if you're keen on learning and getting involved in some of the things I have available currently, I can't recommend the intake 3 of the Movement Mentorship enough. Code NASA, the early bird is open. Code NASA saves 25%. I'd love to see you in there. Again, I'll take a small break at the end of this intake to focus on some of those in-person events. So if you are around Australia, all the people that have gone through the mentorship and that are in the Wormhole will get heavy discounts to those sort of things. But if you are keen on the in-person events, stay up to date, because they will be coming. I love them, and I need to do more of them. If I really want to get this education stuff really rolling, I need to fucking dominate the Aussie market before I start going international. I'm a bit off more than I could chew there. But yeah, if you're keen on learning from me and getting involved in some of these ideas, I can't recommend the movement mentorship enough. Early bird open, code NASA. We are done. Thank you very much.